Oh, can't you see? We're running out of time. You gotta lose your mind if you think you're doing fine. You can't describe it yet, but something is wrong. Where are your dreams now, and why don't you feel strong? Yeah, yeah. Every day, every night you try to find yourself. Don't live your life as someone else.
Welcome to another installment of the Wrestling Matters podcast. How are we all doing? Hope you guys are well. Things have been a little rough for me lately, but I'm getting there. Just bear with me a sec. There we go. Right, on today's show, just a little FYI, we're going to talk about some things and that little thing that I'm going to be talking about as well. I'm going to be doing an extra episode this week, so look out for it. It's WrestleMania predictions, because it's WrestleMania week. So I was going to do it today. I was going to save this episode for this week and then do the WrestleMania predictions, but I thought no. So I'll do this episode now, and then later on this week you will get a predictions episode this week as well, which will more than likely be probably Thursday, I would say. Probably Wednesday, Thursday, somewhere around about that. But either way, you will get it. So yeah, that's coming up this week as well. Also, I want to talk about Jim Ross in this episode as well, because I saw a documentary the other day on YouTube. Not a big full documentary, a mini one, which I actually kind of liked, to be honest. And it was about Jim Ross leaving WCW. Some things I didn't even know about in there, which we'll talk about as well. And also I'll do a top 10 rundown as well. I'll do a top 10 rundown, because I've got a top 10 here of the worst pay-per-views in WWE, or the 10 worst pay-per-views or WWE pay-per-views ever. Apologies. We're back in business, so there you go. So we'll get to that later on in the broadcast. But yeah, I did see this about Jim Ross, which I found very interesting. It was from Cultaholic, and it was part of their series that they've done, or they've been doing. And I found it very interesting. It was about when JR ended up leaving for WCW, for WWE. And what I found interesting about it was all before the executive vice, before Bischoff got out of WCW. I did not know JR was already vice president of something in the company at the time, and he was also the lead announcer. But it was one point, just as they were bringing in Bill Watts, they were going to bring they thingied a vice president. They were looking for a new executive vice president. JR put his name in the hat for that, but he didn't get it because it ended up going to Bill Watts, Cowboy Bill. And yeah, I found that very, very interesting as well. And Watts didn't last long, and even JR admitted himself after he had the meeting with Watts. He had a meeting with Watts, who was his mentor, who got him in the business and gave him his start in Mid-South. He ended up, and after the first meeting that they had together, JR knew he wasn't going to last. So, but yeah, I mean, that was his downfall there as well, because JR became Watts' his right-hand man, much to his dismay. Yeah, it was pretty interesting as well. And then I don't know who got the vice presidency after it. I think it was Bill Shaw, and that's when it started, or that's when they started weaving out Jim Ross at that point, because he left in '93. And I think they offered JR a bigger spot in the company to making more money in the company, but they took him off announcing. But they wanted him to go behind the scenes and work more behind the scenes and have a bigger spot in the company, a bigger hierarchy role in the company. But JR didn't want that because he loved announcing. That's why he's the greatest announcer of all time. So the money was good and the offer was great, and any other person would have took it, but he didn't take it. He ended up going to Vince McMahon. And he left for Vince McMahon, and Vince McMahon said that your debut is going to be on WrestleMania 9, which led to WrestleMania 9 with the toga and everything. And he was lead announcer of WrestleMania 9. Because Jim Ross, Macho Man, and Bobby Heenan were either side of him. And I found that very interesting because, do you know what the one thing he did to stick it to WCW? He had a radio show, and I believe that was affiliate with WCW. Obviously, it was affiliate with WCW because he was working for WCW, but it was his radio show. He invited Vince McMahon on the show and a few other wrestlers from WWE. So, yeah, he invited the wrestlers on from WWE, or WWF at the time, and then left and went to Vince. So he turned down a big job just to go to Vince McMahon. So, but it just shows how passionate he was, and that's why he became the greatest announcer of all time. Because if he hadn't have done what he did, he wouldn't have been the greatest announcer of all time. Shoot, he wouldn't have done it. It wouldn't have happened. So, yeah, I found that very interesting. It's on Cultaholic's YouTube page if you all want to go and check it out. JR sticks it to WCW, I believe the title's called. Yeah, it's a watch. If I can, I'll put it in the description below, whether you're watching this on YouTube or whether you're watching this on Facebook. Just go and check it out, man. It's a very, very interesting watch as well, and credit to them for doing that as well. Very much credit. Big credit for them to do that as well. Now, so another thing I want to talk about before we get to this thing is Triple H. I saw the Triple H interview, and Triple H is now retired. He's done. It's the end. It's the end of the road for the game. And I found it very, very interesting. I found it really interesting. In fact, this what they call it, man. This big interview that he did, which he announced that he was going to be retiring, because it wasn't the fact that he was retiring that was the interest. It was the illness and how it all came about. Triple H being Triple H, he realised there was something wrong, and he went to the doctors and got checked over and everything, and realised there was certain stuff that was going down. You know, something wasn't functioning right with him, so he went to the doctors and got checked over, and they did tests over him and whatever. His doctors realised something was wrong. They realised that something was wrong with him, to the point where they ended up calling him on the phone and told him, no questions asked, get your ass to ER. They said, get your ass to ER, we'll explain along the way. His Widowmaker was at 99% in his body, which means if they hadn't have done what they did, or ended up somewhere around about that, which means if the doctors hadn't have done what they'd done, he'd have been dead. And I literally said this in someone's stream the other day because we were talking about it in the stream. The doctor saved his life. And the thing that was crazy about it is the doctor actually phoned him and told him to get his ass to friggin' ER. They said, get your ass to ER now. Don't ask questions. Don't do nothing. Get to ER. Get there now. And we'll do everything else. And I'll explain along the way. When was the last time a doctor ever did that? When was the last time a doctor ever did that? Crazy. And I literally said to them in the stream, I said, I want that doctor. I'll go broke to get a doctor like that. Man, I'll go broke to get a doctor like that. Because that's the kind of doctor I want. Man phones him up, phones up Triple H, pretty much saves his life and tells him to get to ER. Don't ask questions, I'll explain along the way. Just get yourself to ER, pack what you need, get your shit together and get the fuck to ER now. I want that doctor. Yeah. I'd pay for a doctor like that in a heartbeat. Yeah, but his doctor, or doctors, whatever it was, saved his life. And if it wasn't for Triple H, if it wasn't for them doctors, Triple H would be dead right now. Legit. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, he'd be dead. And that's crazy. Go and watch the full interview. It's crazy. And he announced his retirement, which, in all fairness, should have happened a long time ago. And it was forthcoming anyway. But in all fairness, it shouldn't have happened. In all fairness, it should have happened a long time ago. But, you know, you do what you got to do. But like I say, in all fairness, that should have happened a long time ago. It should have happened a long, long time ago. Him retiring, he should never have stepped back in the ring or whatever. But yeah, that was crazy to me. Absolutely crazy to me. Just mentalness beyond belief. And like I say, he owes his doctor his life. Because his thing was going down percentage-wise. You know, going from 22 to 12 to whatever it was. It wasn't going any higher. It was going down. His Widowmaker was knackered. And like I said, if they hadn't got him in there, he'd be dead. And that's crazy how that happened. And like I say, please, all about that doctor. I'll take a doctor like that any day of the week. I'm all about that doctor. Unbelievable. But yeah, crazy. But yeah, I mean, it's like I say, he owes his doctor his life, big time. Right, let's get to the next part of this here. 10 worst pay-per-views ever. And we're going to start at number 10. This is brought to you by Cultaholic.com, Cultaholic Wrestling, and it's from their YouTube, not their YouTube, their Facebook page. But yeah, 10 worst pay-per-views ever. And the first one is In Your House, The Great North. I don't remember this one. Oh, which one was this? I don't remember the one, because there was some good In Your Houses. But which one was this? The Great North. In Your House 4, The Great North. This had Bulldog and Diesel headlining. I'm pretty sure this, oh yeah, Razor and X-Pac versus Smoking Guns. Was this the night where Shawn had to hand the belt over to Shane Douglas? Dean Douglas to you and I. I don't know. I don't see anything wrong with this pay-per-view. I'll have to go back and watch it, I suppose. But yeah, according to Cultaholic, that was the worst pay-per-view ever. And I mean, it was poor booked for Goldust, because I think he ended up wrestling Marty Jannetty on the show. So yeah, good one. Anything to get the guy over. And Yokozuna went one-on-one with Mabel as well, which battle of the heavyweights. And yes, it was the night where Shane Douglas won the Intercontinental Championship after a forfeit because Shawn Michaels got his ass whooped by Marines in a club. But then Shane Douglas not only won the belt, he ended up losing it to Razor Ramon. So, whatever. Backlash 2018 is the next one, number 9. I actually thought this was decent. You know, alright, it wasn't the best pay-per-view around, but I actually thought this was decent, if I'm honest. You know, rematches from WrestleMania, Jeff Hardy Orton feud, where I believe he was pulling his stuff and that. You know, the ring things and everything like that. Bobby Roode being Bobby Roode. New Day being New Day. Bryan Danielson one-on-one with Colin Cassidy as well, which, yeah, you can think about that one yourself, to be honest with you, what you thought of that. The rematch with Nakamura and AJ Styles. I don't know. Like I say, it wasn't the greatest pay-per-view around, but I don't think it was that bad, if I'm honest. I might be wrong. But, like I said, I'll have to watch it back, and yeah, Samoa Joe and Roman Reigns one-on-one as well. Like I say, it wasn't as bad as they're making out to be. Now, I don't agree with this. Number 8, D-Generation X in your house. I don't agree with that. I'm sorry, nah. That's an L for me. Because that was good. That was a good pay-per-view. I don't know if I would have put Ken Shamrock in the main event with Shawn, though. I think that was the one and only thing. But, yeah, I don't know if I would have put Ken Shamrock in the main event with Shawn. But anyway, Owen Hart attacked Shawn after the match as well. Jump thing, you know, the boot camp match. Slaughter and Triple H, because they had a bit of a feud going into that as well. I think it was the first time on pay-per-view that Austin faced Rock one-on-one. Jeff Jarrett went one-on-one with The Undertaker, which was whatever. Yeah, Austin Rock. I think that was the first time they wrestled together on pay-per-view. Outlaws as well. DOA versus Los Boricuas. Outlaws versus LOD. And yes, Bada Bean and Mark Merrow in a what they call it match. A brawl for all, I believe they called it. It was a boxing match nonetheless, which turned crazy in the end. But yeah, as most of them do when you're in WWE, go back and watch WrestleMania 2. Next one is Battleground 2013, I believe it was. Yeah, 2013. Whatever. Like I say, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of these pay-per-views on here that are being called the worst from the list. But a lot of them weren't as bad as they make out to be. There was a few on here that deserved to be on the list, and we're going to get to them. But there was a few that, you know, was it really? I suppose the Randy Orton, Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan WWE title match was rubbish because it had Big Show interfering, and that's where Big Show was the slave for Triple H and the Authority. I mean, anything the Authority did was bad. Shane Douglas, not Shane Douglas, The Shield, and I believe that was The Shield and Cody. Wasn't that The Shield versus Cody and Dustin and Goldust? they had to get their jobs back and everything like that. Curtis Axel thing. The matches what probably made that show crap. You know, CM Punk versus his worst enemy, I guess you could say, Flaming, what's his name? Ryback, the guy he hated wrestling. You know, I guess the matches on the card probably made that pay-per-view rubbish, to be honest with you, or at least some of them. But, yeah. WrestleMania is the next one. I don't know which one it is. Oh yeah, the WrestleMania with Miz and John Cena headlining it, where Rock came out and interfered, even though he was the host of the show, which led to the once in a lifetime thing. But it actually goes to WrestleMania 9. So, hang on, let me check that. I might have got that wrong. Because they brought up the WrestleMania with Miz and Cena. So I think they've gone to WrestleMania 9. And WrestleMania 9 was poor. I think out of all the WrestleManias, I think that was the worst. Because Brett loses the title, and yes, Hulk Hogan had to win the belt, didn't he? Only to lose it to Yoko, King of the Ring. You know, Hogan couldn't win the tag title, so I thought, oh, we'll put him in the main event. Apparently Hogan lobbied for that too, by the way, to get the title after what happened and that. Stupid. You know, Hogan's famous black eye that he supposedly got from Savage. You know, Bob Backlund versus Scott Hall. Good grief, Razor Ramon. Mr. Perfect versus Lex Luger. Kurt Hennig versus Lex Luger. And yes, probably one of the worst opponents for The Undertaker, even though it was a fit at the time, and that was Giant Gonzalez. And yes, Crush against Doink. And the second Doink, who was Steve Kern, who was Skinner. Headshrinkers against the Steiner Brothers, and a whole lot more. The next one is King of the Ring 1999. Again, I disagree with this, because I actually thought that was decent. Okay, the main event wasn't particularly good. The handicap match with Austin and McMahon's for control of the WWE, but the other stuff wasn't bad for it. I mean, looking back at it, it was a perfect fit for the company, but I think the reason why it's probably considered the worst is because who won the King of the Ring? You know, who won the King of the Ring? Billy Gunn. And that's not a knock on Billy Gunn, but they didn't even do anything with him. Oh, big deal, he got a big match with The Rock at SummerSlam. And a Kiss My Ass match. Did he get anything else after that? No. He didn't. He didn't go for a WWE title run. The two worst winners of the King of the Ring, in my opinion, are Billy Gunn and Mabel. For me. But at least Mabel got a title shot. You know. The next one is In Your House, Rock Bottom. I disagree. Again, I actually thought this was decent, and this was perfect for what they were doing with The Rock at the time. You know, the corporate champion. Why not give him his own pay-per-view? You know. So it made sense for it to happen. Yes, the matches weren't good, but it was perfect for The Rock at the time, considering what they were doing with him. You know, the corporate champion and that. So why not give him his own pay-per-view? Yes, another match with Mankind, the rematch from Survivor Series in the finals. So obviously that's what started their feud, and they had the feud here, and then they had the feud at the Royal Rumble as well. So basically the feud went all the way to WrestleMania, sort of, because it was Austin and Undertaker at WrestleMania, Austin and Rock at WrestleMania, and yeah. A pointless buried alive match, which got Austin in the Royal Rumble, because Austin had to win that to qualify for the Rumble, which he did, and it was a kind of a clusterfuck anyway, because the Outlaws took on the Corporation, Blackman, you know, Goldust and Jeff Jarrett, but it was kind of a clusterfuck in that respect anyway, because the machines didn't hardly work. And of course Deborah's gonna fucking strip. Because that's what it was. Deborah strips and, you know, it's crazy. The next one is Great American Bash 2004. I would agree with this. Because the headline match was The Undertaker's taking on the Dudley Boys with The Undertaker's feud with Paul Heyman that he was doing, to the point where he buried Paul Bearer in the concrete crypt. And yes, somebody came up with an idea. Oh, let's drop the belt to, let's drop the WWE title in the Bull Rope match with Eddie and JBL. Let's drop it to JBL, which started his title run. You know, and some of the other matches as well. Even Mortis was on there as well against Hardcore Holly. Yeah, pretty lackluster. But that's what happens when Kurt Angle, Brock Lesnar, and your big stars are on the shelf, I suppose. You have to make do with what you got as well. You have to take and make do with what you got. So, it is what it is. And I believe there was a US Championship match at that point as well for the in a triple threat. But yeah, trash it. The next one, 100% agree. And I have a difficulty with the next one, to be honest with you, because the next one and number one should be the other way around. You know, I will admit, King of the Ring 95, which is number one, that was the worst King of the Ring pay-per-view. But it wasn't as bad as freaking December to Dismember. Because that was the worst pay-per-view in history. I'll get to December to Dismember in a second. Let me go to what they call it. Because let's face it, December to Dismember was one of the reasons why Paul Heyman got fired, and everybody probably got fired that night. Because it was a mess. And the only reason King of the Ring 1995 was the worst pay-per-view ever, because it was lackluster, it was poor, and Mabel won the thing, which led to nothing. Yeah, unlike Billy Gunn, he got a title shot. He got a title shot against Diesel at SummerSlam and almost killed him. But it just didn't work, because obviously Vince McMahon was looking for a monster heel. So what do you got? You got Mabel there. Let's try and push him and see what happens. Okay? You got a Kiss My Foot match with Brett. Yeah. It was what it was, and obviously something like that was going to happen as well. But was it the worst pay-per-view? No, it wasn't. I would put that number 2 because it was the worst King of the Ring pay-per-view, but nothing compares, nothing beats December to Dismember, in my opinion, 100%. The reason being, at least the matches on the King of the Ring 95 were promoted, were booked. December to Dismember could have been a 2-hour show. Pretty much. Like a 2-hour Raw or a 2-hour SmackDown or a 3-hour Raw or SmackDown. Because only 2 matches were booked on the pay-per-view. Okay? Were promoted on the pay-per-view, I should say. There was more matches as well. But the other matches were thrown in to fill time. You know, you had Tommy Dreamer versus Great Khali and things like that. They weren't promoted. There was 2 matches on that card that were promoted. Hardys versus Eminem. Okay? The Hardys versus Eminem. And the Extreme Elimination Chamber. And I use that term loosely. Extreme, because there was nothing extreme about it. Oh, big deal. They had 4 weapons in a pod. 4 wrestlers stood in a pod. And when they, in the Elimination Chamber pods, and when they came out, they got to bring that weapon out. Ooh. Give me a break. Seriously. It was the worst pay-per-view in the history. I mean, how the hell can you call it a pay-per-view when it was only 2 matches promoted on the show? You know? Was the Tommy Dreamer Great Khali advertised? No. Was any other match on there advertised? No. The 2 that were advertised for the pay-per-view was the Extreme Elimination Chamber match, which Bobby Lashley won. And if you watch CM Punk's DVD, you know what happened as well. And the Hardys and Eminem. Those 2 matches. So, if I was on this right now, I'd swap them 2 around. Yes, by all means, 1995 King of the Ring was the worst King of the Ring of all time. But nothing 100% nothing compares to December to Dismember. Bar none. Like I say, at least on the King of the Ring 95, there was the matches that were on there were advertised and promoted. Only 2 were promoted on the December to Dismember show. Just saying. Anyway, guys, that about wraps it up for this episode of the podcast. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. I will be back next week again. But like I say, look out for me this week because I'll be doing the WrestleMania prediction show as well. So you'll be getting an extra show this week. So yes, Wrestling Madness Podcast Extra will be coming this week. It's a WrestleMania prediction show. And hopefully next week I will do a WrestleMania show. Next week as well. I'll review WrestleMania next week, hopefully. I do plan to watch WrestleMania next week. I've got some other stuff I need to do, but I do plan to watch WrestleMania next week in peace. So you're probably going to get a WrestleMania review next week. So, like I say, stay tuned, and I'll see you all next week. Remember, Wrestling Matters to you. Well, Wrestling Matters to me. It should to you. See you next week, guys.
Can't you see we're running out of time? You gotta lose your mind if you think you're doing fine. You can't describe it yet, but something is wrong. Where are your dreams now, and why don't you feel strong? Yeah, yeah.